play and call it work.
Hi there, and welcome to this week's Sit and Talk with me, Kris. For next week's Sit and Talk, it will be Steve. So any questions geared towards him, have at Steve down in the comments below. And of course, if you're writing in response to anything I've said today, then of course you can write it at Kris. But let's just get right to it. This is Bildrat. Kris, Matt mentioned before that he does not like certain games that have overly sexualized miniatures. As a painter, have you ever felt uncomfortable having to work on those sorts of models? Or would you be happy to spend all day painting weird, Slaanesh boob demons? Well, not weird, Slaanesh. I mean, the sculpt has to be very interesting. I mean, I come from an art background, so, I mean, I have worked on nudes and things like that. And so that kind of subject matter doesn't really bother me at all. So, you know, it's all art as far as I'm concerned. It really, you know, I mean, of course, you know, it does matter, I suppose, in taste. There are some miniature lines out there that, you know, do push the envelope pretty far as taste concerned, but some would just argue that good art always pushes the line anyway. So, you know, who's to say? History will tell, I suppose. But as far as, you know, working on models like that, no, it doesn't bother me in the slightest. There's a lot of miniature lines out there that are pretty risque, and I have one or two of them, so, you know, yeah, it doesn't bother me at all, no. Chozon1. Kris, what advice can you offer someone who's wanting to learn artistic painting, as in to canvas, not minis, for the glory in the arts? Chozon1. Any advice someone wanting to learn artistic painting? Well, just painting, I mean, artistic is many forms, right? To be an artist really an artist is someone who excels at solving problems, kind of things, right? I mean, a chef, solving the problems between, you know, what flavors are going to go well together. You know, he's an artist. You know, an artist can be many things. It's from sciences to culinary to painting to architect, you know, like the list goes on and on, what is artistic. But as far as getting into painting, you know, there are there's three major kind of paints you can use, right? There's watercolor paints, there are acrylic paints, and there are oil-based paints. And then there's also a few other little like tempera and, you know, stuff like that. But they, you know, they have their own kind of rules you have to apply. For example, like, okay, like rules meaning like, for example, oil paint. Oil paint takes a long time to dry. Acrylic paint dries a lot quicker, but I find the color fastness of acrylics really wanting, because anybody who's painted miniatures knows that when you paint, say for example, you take Mephiston red right out of the bottle and you look at the color on the brush and you look at it and it's like, wow, that looks great. And you lay it down and it's like you lay it right down on the model and it's like really this vibrant red. And then when it dries, it loses a little bit of that vibrancy, right? Whereas oil paints don't do that. Oil paints right out, as soon as you squeeze it out of the tube or the bottle and you apply it to the canvas, once it's dried, it still maintains that vibrancy. It's just one of those qualities of working with oil paints. It's one of the reasons why I prefer to work with oil paints, is because the color I mix, and once it's dried, I know I can mix that color again. Because with acrylics, it's kind of hard, because when you mix a color and you apply it to the model, and then you come back months later and go, oh, how did I mix that color? And it can be kind of tricky. So, you know, and that's one of the things. Watercolor, I'm not really a whole lot of experience in watercolor. What we do on our miniatures is actually closer to what watercolor's like, where you're working in very thin layers of color. Now, mind you though, you don't do a whole lot of layering in watercolor. You tend to push the color and create the fades, just kind of like how we do, like, say for example, like feathering or something like that, where you have your deepest color and then you allow the white of the paper to shine through to give you your tinting values. But as far as wanting to learn, take a local class. You know, I'm sure you have wherever you are. I'm sure there's a thriving art community, art scene. You know, check out the local gallery. That's another good place to kind of get plugged into the local art scene. And you know, paint whatever you want to paint. Don't be caught up in all these different movements that have from Renaissance to modernism, postmodern, impressionism. Don't worry about what kind of style of painting you are or painter you are. Just paint whatever you want to paint, and just kind of let it flow through you, and you'll eventually find your muse at some point during that. Some people like to paint fairly realistically. Some people like to paint abstract. And I mean, art covers a wide spectrum, but really, what separates everybody else from masters is time, effort, dedication, and sometimes sometimes it's just brilliance. Really, is what it is. Just the concept of just solving something or presenting something to the viewer that challenges you and in a way that you never expected. And that's why sometimes art, it's very subjective, and as long as it challenges the viewer, it's a good art. And so again, it kind of falls back to the other previous question, but yeah. But get plugged in with your local art scene. I'd say that's about the best bet. I mean, other than pick up some paints and some brushes and have a go on a canvas, and they already have pre-made stuff out there. So it's and don't feel like you're not being a real artist if you buy pre-bought canvases and paint by numbers or things like that. Like these are things to just kind of warm up with, and so yeah, try them out. It's better just kind of just get stuck in than kind of always wondering, well, could I do it? How would I go about it? And just do it, man. Just do it. Where are we? Matthias 81. Kris, I was planning to paint my army in the near future, but I'm not exactly flush with cash. What would you consider a minimum amount of paint needed to paint an army? Black and silver are the main colors. Also, can you recommend a brand of paint that won't break the bank? Well, it's okay. It kind of depends on what you got available around you. You can go to like any of the big box art supply places and pick up kind of like craft paints or even artistic brand paints. They're a little bit pricey, but you get a lot for and of course you're picking up acrylic paints now. You could use oils as well, but you're picking up acrylics. Really, like if it's that tight, yeah, just pick up what colors you need and maybe a few off colors. Like for example, if it's black and silver is your predominant color scheme for the army, maybe pick up some blues and some reds, or blue and a red, a white and a black, or you already have black. Yeah, I mean, really, like the minimum colors anybody really needs for the collection, I always recommend is yellow, blue, green, white, black, silver, gold, and then if you want, you can pick up orange, green, and purple, and you're pretty much set with just those colors there, because then you can just mix and everything and go. But otherwise, there's no there's no hard and fast kind of color like paint lines I can think of, because I mean you could go with the artist grade kind of paints, but I'm not 100% sure as to how they cover on a model. Like as far as pigment is concerned, when you break them down to really thin paint, as we are accustomed to when we are painting our miniatures, because oftentimes artist grade stuff tends to be really heavy bodied, and which means that they're really thick kind of paints. Now the Citadel paints are a heavy body paint in comparison to a lot of other miniature paints. Citadel tends to be the heaviest. Next, I would say, is like P3 would be the next thickest kind of paint, versus say somebody like Vallejo or Scale 75, where their paints are very thin bodied. They flow really thin, and then in fact Scale 75 is actually designed for the brush or for the airbrush. So as you can imagine, the paint is going to be quite thin, but it flows really great. Of course, it also all depends on pigment and how rich the pigment is. So, but as far as paints on the cheap, check your local big box store. as far as paint lines are concerned. Otherwise, I mean, Citadel paints, you know, for the most part, they're readily available. You can pick them up pretty much anywhere. You know, if you want to go with those. Vallejo is another good paint line. For how much you paint you get and for how much you spend, it costs a little less than what you get for Citadel. And I find that their paints are nice and rich and flow really well and cover really well on the models. So Vallejo is a really good one. Scale Save 5 is a good one. You know, the bottles are bigger, but you're paying about the same price as, say, Citadel. So, you know, again, kind of leave it up to you as to where you go from there. Daniel TMU. Kris, where did you get the little pins that you use to mount your models while you're painting them? Those little pins I make. I've just, you know, the little handles I make. We haven't had them in the store for a little bit, but we were selling them in the store. But keep an eye on the store because we'll have a restock soon enough. It was just something that I came up with. You know, like I liked cork. I liked just using like the paint bottles. Another good one was like the Master's brush soap. The Master's brush soap is like that right size for holding miniatures. That's also another good one. And it was just one of those, and I just made it, and I made it out of resin. And I often thought, you know, people had always asked me, well, what is it? And so I wanted to make something custom. And so the one you see oftentimes in the videos, I made it with a grip. And so that's the really big difference. Is the grip is designed for comfort, for, you know, for larger meat hooks like the rest of us here. So, you know, it's for holding the miniature and, you know, staying comfortable and painting easily. And that's the only reason we use those handles. It's the only reason is to paint comfortably. But yeah, the pin that you often see in the videos is mine and my design, and we do sell them. So click on the store, you'll see little pictures for it. They'll be restocked soon enough. Where are we? Gershurgill? G.S. Shergill? G. Shergill? G. Shergill. I'll just say G. Shergill. Hi, Kris. Bork, Shem, der, Herf, der Bork, der, Gitter, du, Dish, der Bork, der Sherm. English, I have been around for some videos to model a scorpion, Tomb King scorpion, bursting out of the ground and having trouble finding help on others have done it. Both the modeling and painting, it look realistic. Have you done something like that before? If not, would it be something you'd cover as it requires the modeling as well as painting? Thanks and keep up the awesome work. P.S. No, I've not done anything like that, like this scorpion busting out of the ground. Yeah, it is heavy on the modeling to convince the viewer that you're looking at the model, you know, like it's busting out of the ground. It would require a lot of pinning within the model to make sure that you get the right balance and the pose. Pinning also to the base so that it stays nice and sturdy. And then, of course, you want to make sure that it's separate so that you can pull it off and paint it properly while you can paint the rest of the terrain. Yeah, I'm trying to think if anything like that has been showcased before, and I'm gonna have to say no. Nothing like that has been done before, and on camera anyway. Maybe it's something we could do in the future, you know, doing conversions and dioramas and things like that. They're a bit more lengthier type processes, so I don't know. Unless, of course, you know, we'd get somebody else to do it, which is entirely possible. But yeah, it's basically a diorama, right? And I mean, like, we're talking like the Tomb King scorpion. Now, if is it fine cast or is it plastic? I don't even know. I'm trying to think. I think that model used to be metal, which means now it's probably fine cast, which means that you have to convert it up a bit to get that pose just right and everything like that, and then, you know, make it look like it's jumping out of the ground and you know, and then have like all the sand kind of kicked out. Now, doing fine things like, say, dust or something like that, really difficult to kind of do. But getting like that explosion in the ground and having like all the debris flying around, and yeah, that'd be really cool. But no, it hasn't been done by me or anything like that. Would be very interesting to do, yeah. But I'm afraid no, we haven't done that. But it's possibly something we might do in the future. Cunning Crow at Kris. I got an airbrush for a gift, and I am super excited to start using it. Problem is, though, I live in an apartment and space is at a premium. Can you recommend a good setup to airbrush inside and keep the mess to a minimum? They sell airbrush booths for like another $100 more. It's a little booth, a spray, turn the fan on, and it'll blow the excess dust essentially out of the area. Basically, you should still wear like a dust mask just to keep yourself safe, but otherwise, something like that would be really good. Also keeps the apartment free from getting really dusty because, if you use the airbrush and you don't have any kind of filtration system, the dust, the particles of paint will just fly through the air and then just settle on everything, and it just looks like more and more dust. You're just going to speed up the process of dust in your house. That's all. Potentially chemicals, things like that, harmful. Possibly, they say the paint's non-toxic, but breathing it in, who knows? As far as a good setup and keep the mess to a minimum, I'd say an airbrush booth is your best bet. They have the little spray things for overspray, so that like a little bottle, you just spray your overspray into the little bottle instead of just kind of spraying it about. You spray it into an overspray bottle and just spray and your excess. Really, in an apartment, your biggest concern, I would think, would be your compressor. Having a noisy compressor, and also, just the compressor, because compressors tend to be very noisy. So, dampening it. Think of ways to dampen that sound. Off the top of my head, I can think of, say, like a platform I could sit on with, say, like rubber feet, like those little pads you can buy for your furniture, and you can just set it on those, and then build like a box. It doesn't have to be an expensive box, but a box, say, lined with egg crate foam, or even just egg crates, and line that and put the compressor inside that box, and hopefully that minimizes a lot of noise. Because really, what it is in an apartment building, like is vibration, right? If you have like neighbors playing music and it's a subwoofer, right? It's a subwoofer. You always hear those low frequency sounds. Well, compressors is the same thing. All they're going to hear is that low drone of that compressor, just woo, and that's all they're going to hear. And people are going to complain. So really, that is I think your biggest concern is reducing the noise on that compressor. But otherwise, getting a tent. Now, of course, online there's a lot of guides for making your own. So if cost is an issue and you're more of a do-it-yourself kind of character, then look up guides for creating spray booths, and hopefully that helps. Mackhawk, Kris, you have seen the PETA. You have seen PETA has sent a letter to GW wanting GW to stop putting pelts on the fur on the models. What is your opinion on this? A valid reason or a little too far out there? Also, what is your personal view on creating models with furs and pelts? Not to read on the show, you can read the letter here, and of course he has the link to the PETA requesting, or Games Workshop, PETA requesting Games Workshop to stop putting fur on their miniatures. Now, personally, I think it's going a little too far. I think it's, the miniatures are like little sculptures of art, and you wouldn't ask an artist to change his subject matter, would you? So right from that start, right from there, that's somebody else interfering with somebody else's art. Right bottom of the issue right there is that's essentially what it is. They're trying to affect the way we perceive things. Now, I realize that yes, it is cruel. There's a lot of cruelty in this world, and animals are being mistreated for profit. I know that, and it is a shame. But greed is a huge factor in this world, and there are many other things that greed sticks its fingers into, and unfortunately, animal pelts just don't rank that high. I think more things like the environment, oil companies, poverty. These things are bigger concerns than fashion, animal treatment. You know, I mean, it's there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's not important. I'm just saying that there are other things that are just, you know, a little bit more visible on the radar kind of thing. Do I think it's, you know, I think it's silly. I think it's a waste of time. I think it's a waste of PETA's resources and our time. It's not necessary. My view on models with furs and pelts, I think it's more of a cultural thing. I think you're speaking of cultural identities and things like that, right? So, for example, the Space Wolves, right? The examples of Space Wolves. Well, they're more of a Celtic kind of Viking kind of, you know, Nordic, this whole kind of, you know, vibe, and furs and stuff like that would feature, as it's very, very cold. I mean, you know, you wouldn't ask an Inuit not to dress as an Inuit. You wouldn't, you know, I mean, it's part of the culture. It's man in his environment, and that's culture. That's, you know, I mean, like, they're asking you to cover up your culture. I mean, now I realize that these characters are fictitious, and, you know, they don't really merit that kind of, you know, it's their culture kind of thing. But it's in that same vein. It's the character. It's, you know, I mean, you're asking to change the character of much literature and sculptures. They're asking you to change art. And, you know, once people start changing art to appease a minority, I mean, where does it stop, right? And I think we've all seen where that one goes. So, no, I don't. I think it's garbage, and it really is a waste of resources. Unpure Kris, when coming up with a color scheme for a new project, how much thought do you put into the basing? Is it more of a side thought, or do you find that the base is an important part of the overall scheme? Honestly, I find the basing to be secondary for the most part. If you're doing a commission piece or a competition piece, diorama, things like that, well then of course, yes, the base is paramount. The base is part of your overall design and color scheme, right? You wouldn't have you know, a lot of dark colors in play in a forest without having some sort of light sourcing and, you know, the colors at play, and, you know, I mean, it's just the subject matter, the miniatures and the environment become one in that regard when you start thinking in dioramas, competition pieces, you know, things of that nature. But when you're talking about your game pieces and you're playing at tournaments and you go into local game clubs and stuff like that where they have like random assortment of tables, I tend to go for neutral bases, neutral grays, neutral browns, things along those lines. You know, it does. I mean, you're perfectly fine playing with your Mechanicum army with, you know, the base is always done in red. Nothing wrong with that. Nobody would fault you for it. I mean, you know, that's their environment. But oftentimes, I always base my miniatures in accordance with really what kind of tables I'll be playing on, or whatever my table was. Whatever my table was at the time. Which was earth and grass. And I still do my models that way. Even though I haven't really played that much, I still base with earth and grass tufts and sometimes full grass, you know? So, you know, it is important. It all depends on in which context that your model is going to be viewed in. Is it going to be viewed in a playing type setting? Where basically, you know, you're going from table, he's going to be playing on a lava table, then he's going to be playing on a forest table. I'd go with neutral colors. Neutral colors just so that the models kind of blend in with your table. If you're going for a competition piece, a diorama, things like that, then the choice of colors for your base are very important. Because again, the base becomes kind of part of the composition and has to complement well with the miniature itself. So, yes. In one side, yes, it's important. The other side, not quite as much. Where are we in the comments? I don't know. I am lost. Oh, Big Zor. Where am I at here? Yep. Big Zor. Hi, Kris. I have a painting question for you. I recently started collecting Gene cults, and I'm doing a cult of the Rusted Claw scheme. Orange clothes and light gray armor, and I have huge problems with how GW orange colors cover surfaces. I have used gray primer, based orange surfaces with Jacaro orange, and was working fine to a point, but once I got to use Troll Slayer orange, it got really messy really fast, and I am simply not able to convince the paint to cover evenly. Puddles of paint, brush strokes, base color showing through. Unless I do 1,000 layers, could you please share some wisdom with us? Cheers, and Vault Member for life, Big Zor. Yeah, the Jacaro orange is a base color, and so it's very, very thick. It feels very thick and greasy, right, when you pull it out of the pot, versus Troll Slayer orange, which is a layer paint, which tends to run a little bit thinner. The layer paints are deliberately designed that way, that they're a little bit thinner, and that they sit on a model, and you will have to apply more than one coat. But as far as laying 1,000 layers down, I don't know. Make sure that you always give your bottles a really good shake. It's entirely possible that maybe the pigment and the acrylic medium, they're not mixing properly, so give them a really good shake. If you can get like a toothpick or something like that and just give the paint a really, really good stir and just give it a good thorough mixing. Otherwise, it's possible it's a bad batch of Troll Slayer orange, or maybe it's a little too thin and too medium-y, too much, acrylic medium. Borrow somebody else's and see if you get the same results, or try another one. But otherwise, yeah, it's kind of tricky, because it's designed to be a little bit thinner, and yeah, you will have to apply at least 2 or 3 quick little layers. But it's a highlight on top of that orange, I do believe, isn't it? When you're using it in that color scheme. But yeah, so hopefully that kind of helps, yeah, hopefully work through that. Macahawk Kris, after watching some of the painting tutorials, sorry, with a lot of Vallejo and Scale 75, I am trying to expand a little outside of GW paints, but would like some input from a pro. Would it be possible to convince you to do some kind of paint review? Some comparisons between different paint manufacturers, G3, P3, Vallejo, Army Painter, and whatever else you have on the secret shelves at your office, pros and cons up for them, and so on, and some of your professional recommendations. Thanks in advance. I am sure it's very useful and informative. There are a few paint reviews I do comparing some of the colors, difference being, I think, Citadel, P3, I think Vallejo. I wasn't playing with Scale 75 at the time, and Iron Paint. I think those ones I do kind of show like how some of the colors thing. I would love to do a full-on comparison. I mean, it would take, it's a fairly lengthy process, or lengthy project to do, but to run each color through the processes, take Citadel, Evil Sun Scarlet, take, Army Painter Blood Red, take Vallejo Blood Red, take, Scale 75, I don't know, whatever red that is the equivalent of them. You know what I mean? Go through all the paints, all their equivalent shades, see how they all stack up, see how what kind of coverage you get on top of white, grays, and blacks, and just put them through their paces and just kind of go through and have this full, complete kind of comparison chart. Yeah, I would love to do that, but that's a lot of work. But I think that's one of those things I think that would be hugely advantageous for a lot of painters out there, for whoever's kind of on the sidelines as far as trying out some new paint lines. Maybe they don't feel like spending the $30 to get a paint set or whatever, But sometimes you just take a leap and you just take a chance and you go and you try it. And ooh, I really like it. I mean, I was like that with Vallejo initially. I was like that with Scale 75. I've used Citadel paints most of my painting hobby lifetime, and using other paints. Well, I used Ralpartha as well as another acrylic paint line, but I found Citadel paints better than Ralpartha's paints. I prefer the near gloss, semi gloss finish to a lot of the colors rather than Ralpartha. Ralpartha dried always with this really harsh, dry kind of matte kind of finish. It was just kind of brutal. Anyway, Chozon 1, Kris, Quirk licked your face. Oh, have you can recover from that? I appreciate your pie eating foo, though strangely the stick your entire face in the pie method is not something I have tried, but now I'm going to. Also, what are some of your favorite TV shows currently on air for Glory and Pie? TV shows on air, I honestly don't watch a lot of TV. I usually watch a lot of Netflix. And on Netflix, man, I mean, it's pretty much everything on there. House of Cards, Stranger Things. I'm waiting for the next House of Cards. Yeah, that'd be great. I watched the latest Voltrons. I watched those with my son. He's a big Voltron fan, so we watched those together. I recently started watching the Star Wars Rebels, just because I wanted to see how the tie-ins, with Rogue One went. Yeah, but as far as regular TV goes, no, I don't watch a lot of regular TV, so I don't really. I mean, I used to watch a lot of Big Bang Theory, stuff like that, but I don't watch those anymore. Not that I'm living in a cave somewhere, or I'm beyond TV or something like that. No, I just don't watch TV, a lot of TV. I mean, after a day of painting, I want to relax, kind of sink into my own little world and do my own thing. And usually TV, it's usually the movies I'll watch, or something different along those lines, documentaries, stuff like that. Black Hawk Tau, many thanks for the outstanding painting tutorials. With your help, even an amateur like myself can paint half decent models. Well, thank you. With regards to the rumor mill and the images released of the 3 new Eldar characters, what do you think of the models, and where would you like to see the Eldar story going? To me, it seems a little strange to think that at least the new Eldar faction worshipping a god of death, but I'm glad that they potentially have a new god on the side of the Eldar to push back against the tides of chaos. Well, Eldar already have one god, right? They have Cain, the god of war and bloodshed and murder. So they've already got one god working for them, and now they have another one, god of death. So. And of course, then the Eldar, the Harlequins, they had the Laughing God, which was another god for working for them. So, Eldar have plenty of gods on hand. I do like where they're going with it. I think it's kind of a bit of a retconning thing. I think they're getting rid of Slaanesh kind of thing. I think that's what that's all about, which is fine. I don't care. Big whoop. I mean, who really played a lot of Slaanesh models anyway? I mean, not this guy. When I used to collect Chaos, I mean, I had maybe 1 unit of Noise Marines, but otherwise I was Nurgle, Death Guard, and some Khorne Berserkers, but mostly just Death Guard. It's Nurgle all the way, man. It's Nurgle or nothing. But I do like the way I do like those new models. They're very, very cool. When they are up for order, we are going to get them, and I'll probably do a tutorial on 1 or 2 of the models. Which I'm looking forward to. The Avatar one looks really, really cool. I've already kind of got an idea what I'd like to do for some of those elements on it. So, yeah. And as far as the story is concerned, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, the way they retcon everything anyway, I mean, Games Workshop can do anything with Eldar. I mean, they can make them so that they're not a dying race anymore. In fact, they're just, a low populous race, or, small like the Tau kind of thing, right? Where they're just not everywhere, They can do whatever they want. I'd say just sit back, enjoy the ride, and, try not to take it too personally when they kill your favorite characters off. William Caw. Kris, the Daleks have invaded the 40k universe. How fracked is the rest of the factions? I'd say very. Because, I mean, when your only protocol is exterminate, it doesn't leave a lot of room for friends. And 40k is all about friendship. And, without it, you can't stand together. You need allies, right? You need allies. You need battle brothers, right? It's in the rules, battle brothers. You need battle brothers. No, it's exterminate. So, I think everybody dies if that's the case. They're just all over the place. They just multiply. It's like worse than Necrons. These Necrons, when they retconned them, they made them silly and maniacal and, stuff like that. Daleks, no, I don't think so. We're done. It's done. The universe is done. They're just going to, exterminate. So that's all the questions I have. There will be no sit and vault, as that was all the questions I had here. So you guys got to ask more questions, or or less. I don't know, whichever it is. Maybe project them astral. But next week is Steve, so have your questions ready for him at Steve down below. If it's a written response with anything I said today, or what I said, or maybe it's another question, save it for the next time. But I mean, it comes around so long. I mean, you kind of forget. It's like, oh, I had this really great question for Kris, and it's like a month later. It's like, oh, I don't remember what it was. So unfortunately, but hey, keep asking, the painting questions. I'm always in the mindset that, new painters and stuff like that feel free to always ask your questions. Even if you think that's something that it might have been asked 100 times, if you don't know and you need to ask that question so that you can understand, ask it. Don't be afraid to ask it. And especially here, don't be afraid to ask it. So, yeah. Till next time, happy wargaming.